My name's Elise, I'm 31, married to Martin, who's 35. We've been together for 7 years and have a beautiful 5-year-old daughter, Sophia. I'm writing this because I genuinely don't know if I'm overreacting or if my marriage is truly starting to fall apart. Martin's family has always been complicated. His younger sister, Isabel, is the golden child. She's 30, a successful lawyer, unmarried, and her parents practically worship the ground she walks on. Meanwhile, Martin works as an electrician, an honest, stable job, but you'd never know it from how his parents treat him. Margaret and Bernard, his parents, have never hidden their disappointment that Martin settled down too early and married me instead of focusing on ambition. That history matters because it explains what happened next. The announcement that started it all 2 years ago, Isabel got engaged to Adrian, a finance guy. Her engagement party was more extravagant than our entire wedding. Naturally, Margaret threw herself into planning an over-the-top summer wedding for her perfect daughter. The date kept changing, first April, then June, and finally she announced it would be on July 16th. That caught my attention immediately. Sophia's birthday is July 15th. At Christmas dinner, when Isabel shared the final date, I casually mentioned, "That's the day after Sophia's birthday." Isabel just shrugged and said venues book fast. Margaret chimed in that we could just celebrate Sophia's birthday another weekend. Martin, of course, said nothing and simply nodded along. I let it go at first. Sophia's still little, we could celebrate early if needed. But then in February, Isabel changed the date again, this time to July 15th. Yes, my daughter's actual birthday. I found out when Margaret called Martin, happily announcing the change. I was right there when she said it like it was nothing. I grabbed the phone and asked if she realized that was Sophia's birthday. She said yes, but a venue had just opened that day and Isabel wanted it. Then she said something that made my blood boil. Sophia will have plenty more birthdays. Isabel will only get married once. Martin hung up and muttered we'd figure something out. I told him there was nothing to figure out. It was ridiculous. Sophia had been talking about her 5th birthday for months. We'd already planned a backyard party, invited her friends, ordered her favorite cartoon cake, even rented a bouncy castle. Martin just said, "My family will never forgive me if I don't go to the wedding." I reminded him Isabel picked that date intentionally. She'd rescheduled twice, and this just happened to land on Sophia's birthday. Please. He told me I was being paranoid, that Isabel wasn't calculating. We fought about it for weeks. His compromise, Martin's solution, was to host Sophia's party in the morning, then drive 2.5 hours to the wedding by 3:30 p.m. I asked him if he realized that meant rushing through our daughter's celebration, forcing her to pack up her balloons so we could go celebrate someone else's big day. He told me she's 5, she won't even remember this. That's when I snapped. She might not remember the details, I said, but she'll remember that her parents didn't make her feel important. He called me dramatic. I asked him straight out, if you had to choose your daughter's birthday or your sister's wedding, which one would it be? He didn't answer. The family pressure begins by April. Margaret was calling weekly about the wedding, RSVPs, menu choices, seating arrangements. Every conversation ending with how important this day was for Isabel. Never once did she acknowledge it was also Sophia's birthday. Finally, I told her we hadn't decided if we were attending. She was stunned. "You're not seriously keeping Martin from his sister's wedding, are you?" I told her. "It's our daughter's 5th birthday. We already made plans." Margaret brushed it off, saying birthdays could be rescheduled, but weddings couldn't. She even suggested leaving Sophia with a babysitter for the day. When Martin heard about that conversation, he exploded at me. He said I should have just told his mother we were going. I said, "You realize your mother just told us to abandon our child on her birthday." He insisted I was making things harder than they needed to be. Isabel reaches out, then Isabel called. She said she'd heard I was upset about the date and wanted to clear the air. She apologized, claiming she'd completely forgotten it was Sophia's birthday when she changed the date. I might have believed her until she added this. "Maybe this can be a good lesson for Sophia. Sometimes we have to make sacrifices for family." Then she said Sophia would understand one day why her parents had to attend a big family event instead. That was the moment I realized they didn't see Sophia as family at all, just an inconvenience. I told Isabel that Sophia is family and her birthday matters. She replied, "Of course she's important, but birthdays happen every year. Weddings don't." That was it for me. I sat Martin down that night and laid it out clearly. He could go to the wedding if he wanted, but Sophia and I would not. We'd celebrate her birthday at home like planned. He said I was giving him an ultimatum. I said Isabel already had. He claimed I was blowing things out of proportion. I asked, "Would you have been okay if your parents skipped your birthday for someone else's wedding when you were 5? He said, "That's different. It's my sister." The tension builds. June came, and Margaret began calling multiple times a week. She accused me of dividing the family and stressing Isabel out. She said, "You should be teaching Sophia to put family first." I said, "Sophia is family." Margaret replied, "She's just a child. She doesn't understand how important this wedding is." I told her Sophia deserves to feel important on her birthday. Margaret said I was spoiling her. The final straw came 2 weeks before the wedding. Martin came home and told me he'd spoken to his father. Bernard had said missing Isabel's wedding would permanently damage his relationship with the family. He told Martin that some things matter more than a child's birthday. I asked Martin what he said back. He admitted he didn't argue, he just said he'd think about it. Then he told me, "Maybe we should just go to the wedding. Sophia will get over it." That's when I knew. My husband was willing to let our daughter feel forgotten on her birthday just to keep his parents happy. So I stopped debating. I started finalizing Sophia's party with or without him. The week before the house was tense. Martin barely spoke to me. His phone was constantly buzzing with calls from his family. Isabel called twice, again asking me to bring Sophia because she'd love seeing her cousins. Then, on July 14th, Martin came home from work and made his choice. He said, "I'm going to the wedding. My family will never forgive me if I don't. You and Sophia can still come if you want." I said no. He accused me of being selfish and said I was using Sophia to punish his family. I said, "No, I'm protecting her from people who treat her like she doesn't matter." He said he'd leave early Saturday morning and come home Sunday. He asked, "What are you going to tell Sophia when she asks where I am?" I told him, "I'll say Daddy had to be somewhere else." The birthday Saturday morning, Sophia bounced into our room, excited and glowing. "Where's Daddy?" she asked. I told her he had to help Aunt Isabel with something important but would see her soon. She found his present, a doll she'd wanted, and was thrilled, playing with it for a few minutes before asking, "When's Daddy coming to my party?" The party started around 1 p.m. Her little friends arrived, the bouncy castle went up, the cake was perfect, but every so often she'd run to the door, convinced Daddy was finally here. Each time it wasn't him. Around 2 p.m., Margaret called to check how the party was going. She said Martin had arrived at the venue. I said everything was fine and hung up. An hour later, she called again, this time to brag about Isabel's dress. I didn't respond. Despite everything, the party was beautiful. Sophia laughed, played, and smiled all day. But I counted, she asked about her father 18 times. When it was all over, she fell asleep on the couch holding her new doll, still waiting for him. That night, Martin texted photos from the wedding, Isabel smiling in her gown, the reception lights, the champagne. He messaged, "Sophia looks happy in the photos you posted. I'm glad her party went well." I didn't reply. The aftermath. Martin came home Sunday evening around 7:30 p.m. Sophia was already in bed. But when she heard the garage door, she ran downstairs and hugged him tightly, bubbling with excitement as she told him about her party. He looked exhausted and guilty, but listened to every word. Later that night, when she was asleep, we talked. He said the wedding was beautiful, but he couldn't stop thinking about Sophia's party. He said people kept asking where we were, and Isabel mentioned Sophia a couple of times. I asked if it was worth it. He said he didn't know. I told him Sophia had asked for him 18 times that day. He looked crushed for a second, but then said, "I still think I made the right call. Isabel only gets married once. Sophia will have many more birthdays." And that's when I knew nothing had changed. He still believed his sister's happiness mattered more than his daughter's feelings. Now it's been weeks, and I can't look at Martin the same way. I keep replaying Sophia's face every time she ran to the door thinking Daddy was home. I used to think Martin's family was the problem. Now I'm not sure he's any different. He didn't just miss his daughter's birthday, he chose to, and I'll never forget that. So tell me, am I wrong for not going to my sister-in-law's wedding? Was it really dramatic to choose my child over an adult's vanity day? Or did Martin's family cross a line that can't be undone? After Martin came back from Isabel's wedding, the silence between us lasted for weeks. He tried talking about moving forward, but I couldn't move past what he'd done, or the fact that he didn't see it as wrong. Outwardly, Sophia seemed fine, but she began waking up from nightmares and whispering questions like, "Does Daddy still love me?" That shattered me more than any argument ever could. A month later, Martin suggested a family trip to Disney World to make up for missing her birthday. I told him it wasn't about money or vacations, it was about choices. He wanted to buy our forgiveness. I wanted him to understand what he broke. When he brought up marriage counseling, I agreed, hoping he was finally ready to face reality. The first session was tense. I told the counselor how Martin had prioritized his sister over his daughter. Martin insisted I was clinging to one bad day. The counselor asked him whether he'd considered other ways to be there for both. He said, "You can't move a wedding." I replied, "You can't move a child's birthday either." He countered that birthdays happen every year, weddings don't. That single sentence showed me exactly where we stood. When the counselor asked what he thought Sophia felt, Martin shrugged and said, "She's fine." So I told him about the nightmares, how she feared he didn't love her. His expression faltered for the first time. I thought maybe that was progress. I was wrong. 2 days later, Margaret called. She said she'd heard we were having issues and wanted to help. What she really wanted was to tell me I was punishing Martin for doing the right thing. According to her, a 5-year-old couldn't understand weddings, and I was teaching Sophia to be selfish. Then she said something I'll never forget. "Once Isabel has kids, you'll understand how important it is to support family." When I hung up, I knew, to them, Sophia and I would always come second. At our next counseling session, Martin complained that everyone was mad at him. He said his parents thought I was tearing the family apart over something that had already happened. The counselor asked him what he'd done to earn forgiveness. Martin said, "I apologized and offered to take Sophia somewhere special." He still wouldn't admit he'd been wrong, only that he was sorry I was upset. The counselor finally asked him to imagine Sophia's wedding clashing with his brother's. "Who would you choose?" she asked. He said, "That's different, she's my daughter." I looked him straight in the eye and said, "She's your daughter now too." But it didn't matter. Counseling was going nowhere. Martin wanted me to stop being angry, not to understand why I was hurt. 2 weeks later, Isabel announced she was pregnant. Margaret called, practically glowing, telling me how wonderful it was that Isabel was married and financially stable, as if that made her baby more valuable than ours. When Martin heard the news, he was thrilled. "Sophia will have a cousin close to her age," he said. I just nodded, knowing exactly what that meant, another reason for his family to forget us. That night, I told Martin I wanted to separate. He thought I was bluffing, that I'd calm down like always. But I wasn't bluffing. I told him this wasn't about one missed birthday, it was about years of being second place. He couldn't name a single time he'd stood up for us. Not once. That silence was all the answer I needed. I found an affordable apartment. It wasn't fancy, but it was safe and close to a good school. When I told Martin, he begged for one more chance, counseling, a trip, anything. But it was too late. Love without action means nothing. When Sophia and I moved out, she asked if we were on an adventure. I told her yes, a new start. At night, she asked if Daddy was mad at her. I said no, that this wasn't her fault. But deep down, I hated that she even wondered. Martin took her for weekends. He tried being the fun dad, zoo trips, ice cream, gifts. She laughed with him, but when she came home, she'd say, "Daddy looked sad." I told her, sometimes people realize things too late. Then came another call from Margaret. She said she'd heard about our separation and wanted to help us fix it. I almost laughed. She said I needed to let go of my anger and stop keeping Sophia away from her family. I told her I wasn't holding a grudge. I was protecting my daughter from people who didn't see her value. Margaret argued that I was being unfair, that Isabel's baby would need family around. Then she said the line that froze my blood. "When the baby's born, we hope Sophia can help. She'll make a wonderful little assistant." They wanted my 5-year-old to be free childcare. That was the moment I knew for sure we were done. I called my lawyer the next morning and filed for divorce. I requested full custody of Sophia and limited visits for Martin, no unsupervised time with his family. He protested, saying I was being cruel. I told him protecting my child isn't cruelty. The divorce finalized a few weeks later. Martin gets Sophia every other weekend, and he's not allowed to take her to family gatherings. Isabel gave birth last month. Margaret called twice, asking when she could introduce big cousin Sophia to the new baby. I told her Sophia wouldn't be attending any family functions. Margaret accused me of poisoning Sophia against them. I simply said, "Sophia's family is me and Martin, the rest, that's her choice when she's old enough." When I hung up, I looked over at Sophia, coloring at the table. She smiled, carefree, her curls bouncing as she laughed at something on TV. For the first time in years, I felt peace, quiet, steady peace. Martin's family will never understand, and maybe he won't either. But someday, Sophia will. She'll know that when it came down to it, her mother finally chose her and never looked back. A few weeks later, on a quiet Sunday morning, there was a knock at my door. When I opened it, Martin was standing there, holding a small pink gift bag. He looked tired, older somehow. "Is Sophia home?" he asked softly. I hesitated, then called her over. She ran into his arms, laughing, showing him her latest drawing, a picture of the two of them holding hands. Martin's eyes filled with tears. "She drew this yesterday," I said quietly. "She still loves you, she just needs you to show up." He nodded, swallowing hard. "I know," he whispered. I'm trying to be better." When he left, I watched from the window as he walked to his car. He sat there for a long moment, staring at the drawing Sophia had given him. Then he wiped his face, started the engine, and drove off without looking back. That night, after putting Sophia to bed, I noticed the pink gift bag still on the table. Inside was a small music box, one Martin had made years ago when Sophia was born. When I wound it up, it played a soft, familiar tune. And taped inside the lid was a note in his handwriting. "For her 6th birthday, I'll be there this time." I don't know if I believe him, but for the first time in a long while, I didn't feel anger, just a quiet hope that maybe, someday, Sophia will get the father she deserves. Until then, I'll keep doing what I've always done, choosing her, every single time. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to leave a comment, hit subscribe, follow for more, and turn on the bell icon so you never miss the next one.